To make a move like that, you have to have kahunas and conviction.
Long term, I'm bullish. We could see about a 20% correction next year.
This is Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback. Don't touch that dial. So what do? Do you, if you're listening right now, trying to protect your money from Medicaid, do you use Medicaid asset protection trusts, gifting strategies? What do you use in particular?
All that. So you can set up gifting trusts, set up trusts for children, right? We can start gifting to children. You can still retain, quote unquote, a certain level of control. There are certain trusts that can be set up whereby they are exempt from Medicaid, but oftentimes people don't, necessarily prefer those trusts, or otherwise they don't want all of their assets in that trust, because what those trusts require is that you transfer assets into the trust, say $100,000. You can use those funds to supplement your Medicaid, but upon your demise, whatever's remaining in the trust must be turned over to Medicaid to offset the cost of, whatever they forked out for your assistance.
So break this down a little more. So I'm, listening right now. I got, somebody listening might have a $500,000 house paid off, and they have $300,000, I don't know, in bank, brokerage accounts, whatever it might be. Or the reverse, maybe a $300,000 paid off house, $500,000 of assets. If they put the $500,000 in one of those Medicaid asset protection trusts, is that subject to the 5-year look back or what?
Well, then it wouldn't be a Medicaid asset protection trust. Well, it's two. I'm sorry. The one trust that I was describing, it's a trust that's qualified by Medicaid that you can set up. I can't think of the term right now offhand, right? But it's also in my book. And so essentially you're saying, hey, Medicaid, here's the trust that I'm setting up. I'm going to transfer some money in there. It's going to be to supplement my care. And then I'm agreeing that upon my demise, whatever amounts you put forth for my care will be offset by whatever's remaining in this trust. So that's one thing. But to your point, I think a little bit what you're saying different is Medicaid. I'll explain it in case, people miss it. Medicaid, if you need the assistance of the government, right, you go into an institution, they're going to do some investigation. They're going to ask you some questions like, hey, do you have assets? Right? Yeah, I got a few dollars. Like, how much do you have? I got 50,000. Well, that's too much. That's too much, right? You can only have $4,000. So the other $46,000 will be penalized. Okay. Fast forwarding to your question. All right. Well, in preparation of potentially being subject to having to liquidate, if you will, your assets or turn them over to Medicaid, what can you do? Well, if you set up a trust today, this is why it's important to set up a trust early on. If you set up a trust, revocable trust, irrevocable trust, and you transfer that $500,000 into that trust, if it's a revocable trust, 10 years later, you're going, you need the assistance of the government. They'd ask, do you have any money? Well, you're going to say, no, I don't have any money. And you'll be telling them the truth because the money is owned by the trust. And then they're going to ask you the smart question. The smart question is going to be, well, are you the beneficiary of any trust? No one's checking, right? I won't say I tell clients, I'll just say it this way. If you set this trust up more than 5 years back and you told them there's, I don't have any money and it's in that trust, there's no way for them to know, right? So some people set up trusts. It's more than 5 years ago. There are no breadcrumbs to the trust, and they may just say, no, I don't have any assets, nor am I the beneficiary of any trust. However, you may take that. But if it's a revocable trust, now I'm going to take the conversation a bit deeper. But I try not to because people may get lost. Depending on the type of trust you have, that will determine if your assets are actually not considered to be your asset at the time that you're being reviewed by Medicaid or by an institution to determine if you have assets subject, to their claims. If you have a revocable trust and you're the beneficiary of that trust, and you're also the trustee of that trust, even though you set it up more than 5 years ago, technically it's still your asset. Okay. So doing it more than 5 years ago does not necessarily protect your assets. Setting up a trust, rather. It's the type of trust that you set up. Now, if you set up an irrevocable trust and you're not the trustee, you could still be the beneficiary, but you don't have the authority to say when and how much you're to receive from that trust. That's different. Then the only amounts, if you will, if we're talking about cash, or the only assets that potentially would be subject to the claims of, this third party or Medicaid, would be those amounts that are available to you at that time.